Friday. Welcome to Teague Talks. This is a quarantine thing we're trying. I think it's good for us to come together and just learn and listen to what everybody's working on. Mit Shah, great friend of mine, was fortunate enough to be the guinea pig for the first one. And I think we had a great talk. I think you guys are really going to enjoy. We'll try to do a series of these so everybody can listen and learn and not feel so alone out there. So I hope you like it. Enjoy. Welcome, Mit. Thanks for coming and talking with me. You looking good. It's good to see your face. We're doing these installments of Teague Talks, as they say. We just want to reach out and give people content and listen. I think we're all natural people. So let's talk. Let's get caught up. This shouldn't take too long, but tell me how life is. Tell me how the work is. Tell me how your hotels are. Let's talk a little defense, then let's talk a little offense.
Sure. Well, I think the thing that's the most important that we can always say to each other is to make sure that everybody that we love and care about are safe and well. It's interesting, but that really is the most important thing that I think we can all ask of one another. So fortunately, everyone in our household and all those that we care about and folks on the team at Noble, we're all well. I think we've gotten all used to how to communicate on a daily basis, much like we're doing right here. And, this is a new technology. It's been around for a while, but it feels like we've all become very adept at using it and seeing each other's faces and communicating this way. But I will say that kind of in how we're all wired, while this, suffices in the interim, there is nothing like, being side by side in the trenches, with your team. And having that frenetic energy take place. So I am looking forward to, at the appropriate time, for that to take place.
So you're not concerned that this new era that we're in is going to have an impact on the travel industry?
Well, look, I think there's to be seen, what happens in the phases until we actually get a vaccine that works. And so whether that's 12 months from now, 18 months from now, is unknown. But I think we're going to go through a series of phases between now and that point in time. That's going to be about guest safety and employee safety, and what does that look like between now and that point. And hopefully there's a therapeutic that also comes about during that time period that makes people feel better. So, back to the concern about travel and tourism coming back. The answer, that, I've always thought about in over 27 years, every time I thought that there was a situation that was going to, create great consternation, the human spirit has kind of led us through. And so this is really about science and the human spirit working together, but also us, working together as an industry to figure out how do we really, put out there what the new standard of care is going to be. I think the HLA has done an incredible job in this crisis, and a lot of that legwork has gone on, in years past by really getting the leaders in our industry to be a part of, a single association that can have a unified voice. I think that's been very beneficial in Congress, but I also believe there's going to be extremely valuable in how the people think about travel going forward and in this new phase of where we're at. And so whether that's the cleaning systems that take place and how to appropriately sanitize a room such that if you're a customer and you're wanting to stay in a hotel, that that it's been sanitized and it's been that there's a check of authenticity around that. How do you protect guests? I think you're going to see interesting changes in the check-in experience that that will take place. I believe that the advances that have been made with kind of kiosk and mobile check-in and mobile key and the like will become that much more valuable. I think you'll see changes in terms of housekeeping standards. There'll be a deep sanitation, clean at the very beginning. There'll be minimal, if any, housekeeping during the stay, and then there'll be a sanitization afterwards. I believe that you'll find that food and beverage of how we have seen it in the past, especially in the select service extended stay space, with these buffets and the eggs and all of that. to really change dramatically in kind of, where things go in the future. And so, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change, but I believe at the very beginning, we've got to make sure that as an industry, each brand is going to want to come out with like, oh, here's our new clean room and here's how it's going to work, et cetera, right? Because it's, they all think that, being the first mover, but the reality is that the industry, I think, will all kind of come together, much like the airline industry has, and say, here's a new standard of care that takes place. And I think that's going to bode well for the customers feeling like, they're entering into a safe environment.
Yeah, I think it's so spot on. And I think that's kind of the fun conversation. What's our world going to look like when we do come out of this? I mean, 2 years from now, how are things going to change? And I do think you're right on. There's going to be a material difference.
Right.
I hope people continue to travel. I hope this doesn't impact that. But I don't know. Are people still going to sit in the middle seat 2 years from now?
Yeah. Look, I think we're trying to focus on what does the next 3 months look like.
Yeah.
What does the next 6 months look like? There's lots of interesting discussions. On the NBA front, which is near and dear to both of our hearts. I think there was optimism a few weeks ago that we could get teams assembled in Vegas or the Bahamas, quarantine them, get them to play without fans, have a playoff, in August. We're still early to figure out if that's feasible or not, right? I think the goal is that how do you go play college football? Athletic directors around the country really have to make this decision in the month of June, whether or not we're going to play college football, A, and then B, play college football with fans, in the stadium. It's a big deal to universities in terms of just their budgets, across. And so if you think about our space in terms of the hotel space, we've got obviously a lot of different kind of, parts of our industry. You've got the resorts, you've got the large convention and conference hotels, and then you've got, the select service and extended stay business, which, populates a lot of, the time you and I spend together, and certainly, the great conference that, Hunter puts on every year, and constituency. So I think we all understand that the transient business is going to move differently than the group business. That individual travelers for both leisure and for business have always behaved differently than that group traveler. And this case should not be very different. If we can actually restart the economy in a safe way and people can get back to normative behavior, it is likely one of the first things that people want to do is to get away out of their homes, to go somewhere with their families, relatively close. And separately, when the dust settles, going out and seeing your key constituency. And that means, you're going to be going to New York and meeting with folks. I'm going to be, on the road and meeting with folks and doing what is a part of how we engage and how we, build our businesses. That's normal. In terms of behavior. I go back to when you and I were much younger and we saw the tragedy of 9/11 unfold. I remember conversations we would have. It says, like, how does travel resume in any way, shape, or form when we have just witnessed, something like this take place? How do people feel safe about getting on an airplane? And the reality is that we put in safety measures and protocols that you didn't know 100% that they were safe, but it made you feel safe. And over time, it proved out that, it did create, real safety in terms of travel. And then the human spirit took over. And I believe that what we have to do today is to make sure that we provide that kind of safety to our, guests, to our employees, that are in our hotels. And then just ensure the fact that, we stand behind it. Singapore has done some interesting things, with that kind of in an early adopter fashion with their SG Clean. They essentially, require, hotels to have an ambassador, of sanitary and cleanliness. And then they've got protocols that are in place. And it's about how do you make sure that your employees are well? How do you make sure, guests and the check-in experience and what happens if there's an incident, et cetera? I suspect that something like that will be put in place that will allow, hotels to operate by a certain standard of care that will make, customers feel better about going in until there's a therapeutic and a vaccine.
And as psychology is a big piece, we get used to it, right? We're now used to security lines. Heck, we're sort of used to staying at home now and social distancing and wearing masks in public. So I do think the psychology shift will be interesting. And I think we'll be comfortable with it. I'm amen with you on the human spirit. I'm pulling for that. I think that'll always pull us through. So I think it'll be good. It'll just be fascinating to see how we change. Tell me, what kind of impact has this had on the fundraising side of the business? Have we been having fundraising conversations, or are we? I know you're not in the middle of a raise.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So look, fortunately for us, we've got a lot of dry powder in our current fund series that we've held on to. I think it's interesting. People right now from the in terms of our LP group, which as are some of the foremost state pension plans and university endowments and foundations, they're really trying to figure out what their current exposure is right. And so if you think about what they invest in everything from the public markets and the private markets to energy to to various other alternatives and bonds and the like. And it's right now, with public valuations bouncing around a lot of place. Essentially, the denominator effect. There's a balance of public market exposure, private market exposure. So the public market exposure drops in value significantly. Then that gives you less ability to balance that with private market exposure.
Yep.
Right. And so also, every quarter, closed-end private funds are required to mark to market, essentially deem what a valuation of their portfolios would look like as of March 31st. It's a great question, right? What would that really mean if you had to go and sell your assets as of March 31st? So it's fictional. And what you've seen is, Tom Barrack at Colony kind of came out and said, hey, we got to eliminate all these, poorly marked to market in this time period, because you could have a scenario whereby March 31st is like this, but June 30th is like this. And then, you're creating all this consternation kind of in the interim. But let's assume that, you move on. I think it's going to be a period of real dynamic within kind of the investor universe, and even those that kind of get private investments. I remember in 2000, we had, one of our early private funds, and there was a lot of individuals that were in that, private fund, and we made a capital call, in 2000. And I got a number of calls back and said, I don't know that I can make the capital call. Like, why is that? I said, I had all this money in technology stocks, all these things that were going to, .com that blew up, right? And it's like, I don't know that I've got the ability in which to kind of go and do that. And I think what you're going to find just in this interim piece, everybody knows that there is going to be opportunity out of this crisis. And, when you look at travel and hospitality specifically, you see what's happening on the public side. You see kind of where, private, individual owners, are going to have some issues kind of coming through the PPP program, and what happens when you've got to resize, a loan, sometime, over the next, 6, 9, 12 months. And with cash flow being, kind of the worst on the T12 basis that we've ever seen. That's going to allow capital to be deployed across a wide spectrum of different opportunities. So I think that there's a balance right now. It's about it's kind of like the hotel side, right? Kind of figure out how do you get to phase one and through phase one, and then get into phase two. We don't see, there's been some things you've probably seen that have been out in the marketplace, primarily being sold by public REITs. That have gotten, a little bit of visibility, but no conclusion, right? There's no trades that are happening, and the like. So, we do believe that as we get towards, the third quarter of this year, there will be visibility on what bottom kind of has, looked like, for our industry. I think it gives better clarity for everybody in terms of what to do next.
I love it. Our heads are in the same spot. We're seeing the same thing. Mit, thanks for coming. Let's keep these up. My final question is, I think you hit on it, but I want to know, are we playing basketball this year? When's the next time you and I get to go to a game?
It's a tough question, Teague. I'll tell you, I thought 2 weeks ago, there was a better than 50-50 chance that we play basketball, and we would watch basketball being played, right, with no fans, and we'd crown a champion in the NBA before Labor Day. I'm now, less optimistic. I believe the NBA will probably make a decision, in the next 30 days or so. My real concern isn't that. It is when we do reopen and we do start our season again. Let's assume for a moment that season starts on Christmas Day, December 25th. We have NBA games, et cetera. But now we got a new season that starts. We don't compete with college football. We don't compete with the NFL. We get to go through and actually have our playoffs in the summer. I was on an owner's call last week that kind of went through the dynamics. It's better for TV. It's better for the fan experience, et cetera. But here's the question. When do we allow people back into arenas? You can't social distance in an arena.
When you have
right. Hey, Teague, you've got 2 seats. You can only have one of them now, right? That doesn't work, right? And the cost of that. So can we be at a point by the end of this year where we're allowing 20, 30,000 fans in arenas on 3-4 times a week, on home arena to socialize them? A lot has got to take place between now and having to make that decision. Therapeutic and on our way to immunization, but it's also the human spirit, right? It's also people feeling like they can kind of engage in that. I think we'll know a lot more by the time we get to the end.
I think you're right. And I've listened for passion. I don't have the connection you do, obviously, but starting the NBA in December, going January, February, going that, I think I love it. I mean, why not try it, right? Yeah. Let's go see. Yeah. Let's see what it looks like. And I think more and more of that's going to happen out there in the world. Yeah.
It also gives the league time in which to kind of watch this play out as well, right? Which is before it's supposed to try, starting traditionally as we did in October.
Because you don't know, but are we playing football, right? That's the next question.
That's a big question. And listen, there's a lot of schools that can't survive without the revenue that college football provides.
You're already seeing it.
I mean, it's just, you're seeing schools cut programs. You're seeing there's just, there's a lot of dominoes to fall. Look, on a personal level, we want to send our kids back to college, right? While our son will graduate without a ceremony, right? And go on to work. Our daughter, who will finish her freshman year at home, you want that experience for her to happen, but you also want her to be safe. So how do you get students back on campus? Well, you test all of them, then you quarantine the ones that don't, that don't test well. But then you got to make sure that those that don't test well stay quarantined, and those that do test well don't go off the reservation, right? And it's super complicated, right? Especially when you're talking about, the human spirit. So those are all things, yeah. First things first, let's take the first step. Let's make sure that our guests feel like there's a safe environment awaiting them when they're ready to travel. Let's make sure that, our employees feel like, they've got a work environment that's also going to be safe and protected. I think that's a good next start for our industry.
Well, with leaders like you and Arnie and many others in our industry, we're going to do great. We're going to come out of this really well. There's brilliant minds talk about this all day, every day. And I agree with the human spirit, so we'll come out of this just fine.
Very good.
Mit, you're the man. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, buddy. It's great seeing you.
I'm ready to get back on the golf course together.
I agreed. Let's do it soon. Take care.
Cheers.